A 14-year-old girl who is being served by Family and Children's Place writes, "Why me? Why did I do it? Did I make him think I wanted something so awful to happen to me? Could I have stopped this evil thing inside this person that I once loved so much? Was my grandpa sick inside his head and thought touching me in inappropriate ways? Could it have been my fault? Two of my best friends never knew a thing. I tried giving them hints just to try to see if they would know. I even told them one day in my sunroom that I was abused by my grandpa. And then quickly, as they started talking about how we should tell, I told them I was just joking. We laughed and we went on as if nothing was wrong. People would never believe it could happen to me. I mean, I was a cheerleader. I was popular. I always had a boyfriend at my side. I can't blame them. I didn't want them thinking anything was wrong with me. But then I started finding late nights of staying up from nightmares and throwing up and crying until I fell asleep, and life just wasn't getting it. And that's when I decided to write the letter to end my life. Now, fortunately, this young lady did not end her life, and there was a real temptation I had that to invite Judy Lambeth and Marta Miranda and Will Myers, folks in this audience who are the real front line fighting abuse in this community, to do nothing but stand for 20 minutes and share with you story after story. Because clearly one of the first things that we need to do with community leaders like you is to not just engage, but to inflame your heart. I assume that just those two paragraphs grabbed your heart. So I'm going to move on to two other areas that I hope to engage you on today. After your heart is, I want to make sure that we inform and engage your head. Randy Cole told me that you all were very deliberate and you needed to be out of here. I think he said 3 o'clock. So I'm just kidding. I'm not going to kill you with data today. I do want to direct you to an infographic that I hope you found that Kentucky Youth Advocates, in collaboration with Kosair Charities, has prepared. There's a lot of data on there, and there's a lot more data that is available. But I want to paint just two pictures for you, because I think one of the things that we have to do is to clear any mythology that you might have around child abuse in the Commonwealth. When you hear stories like I just read, or when Judy or Marta or Will or other folks could share a volume of other stories with you, it's very tempting, isn't it, to think that this is a rare and unusual circumstance. I'm here today to tell you that that is not the case. A week ago today, the Bats opened their season. I want you to picture that jewel of a stadium, Slugger Field. I want you to picture it filled to capacity, standing room only. The concourse is filled, but instead of baseball fans, those are victims of child abuse in the last year, in the last 12 months in Kentucky. And guess what? There's not enough room in the stadium. In fact, over 5,000 children would be ringing that stadium if we brought all the kids in Kentucky who had been abused in the last 12 months together. If that doesn't scare you, let me tell you that the most conservative estimates by national groups is that child abuse is roughly underreported by 50%. So if we were to use the real figures that experts suggest, we would fill Slugger Field, we would fill the Yum Center, and we would still have 10,000 children who had been victimized in the last 12 months standing outside. So the first thing that I want to do in terms of engaging your head as well as your heart is to make sure that you understand that this is not a rare or isolated plague that confronts the Commonwealth, but it is all too common and all too pervasive. The second thing that is so important is that you have an accurate portrait of what child abuse means in Kentucky. The vignette I read is half reflective and half not reflective of the typical abuse case in Kentucky. What was not reflective was the abuse for this young lady began at the age of 6. In fact, the disproportionate number of abuse cases in Kentucky are around children who are 4 years or younger. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen to adolescents and teenagers, but the vast proportion of abuse cases are 4 years and younger. What was accurate about that vignette is that a disproportionate number, indeed the vast majority of abuse cases emanate from a mom or a dad or a close relative. It's the most intimate family members who are responsible for the vast majority of abuse in Kentucky. And let's be honest, it's easy when you read newspaper headlines or you watch that docudrama on one of the cable shows that we tend to think that it's from the weird guy in the park or the kooky neighbor down the street, or it's that middle school boy or that teenage girl. And that's not to say that doesn't happen, but it is to say that if you accurately get the picture of abuse in Kentucky, it's the youngest children by the most trusted members of their family. Now, again, in my goal today, knowing the prominence of this club, is that I want to engage you. Kosair Charities announced this week a decade-long campaign to end child abuse in this community within a decade. And you are the exact people that we need to ensure that that goal becomes a reality by 2023. So we need your heart, we need your head, but perhaps most importantly, we need your hand. One of my favorite quotes came from a social observer named Ted Sizer. Mr. Thomas and Mr. Heiser will know that 15 years ago, Ted Sizer was an architect of school reform in this community. And Ted Sizer had a wonderful quote that we face a blizzard of obligations and opportunities. I'd like to use that concept as we talk about ending child abuse in Kentuckiana today, because leaders like you face that two-edged sword, obligations and opportunities. Let me start with one obligation that if I didn't deliver, I feel like I wouldn't be honoring my responsibility, because we do this at any event, and that is it's important for everybody here to know that Kentucky is not Penn State. You know, the underbelly of the Penn State situation was that, in fact, many of the well-publicized folks in the Penn State scandal met the law, because in Pennsylvania, you simply have to tell somebody that you're thinking about suspecting it. You don't have to take action. In Kentucky, we have what's called mandatory reporting, and that means that everyone in this room today is required by law that if you suspect abuse, you have a legal, not just an ethical, obligation to report that. And so to me, the obligation is not just that you know that, but I would challenge you as business leaders and attorneys and nonprofit leaders and members of faith communities to ask yourself the question, what are you doing to ensure that everyone in your circle understands that legal responsibility? So the one takeaway, if nothing else, is that you have to walk out of here knowing that by law, and I would hope by ethics, you're charged with the responsibility of being a vigilant watchdog around abuse. The second phase of this, however, is much more, in my mind, about opportunities. You know, for instance, experts in the field, such as Dr. Melissa Curry, who is the forensic pediatrician that runs the University of Louisville's work in this area, persistently talks about that she believes the biggest opportunity we have, if you hear that it's those little kids and mom and dad, that we have to think about where abuse comes from. And to me, one of the most frightening aspects of abuse is how easy it is to happen. I mean, what we see time after time after time is that mom or dad has pulled a double shift. They're already tired. They've put the kid down for the nap, and the crying continues and continues and continues. I'm telling you, that mom did not wake up today saying, I think I'm going to abuse my child. But instead, that proverbial straw breaks the back, and as she shakes that baby, that youngster's brains are scrambled, or as she grasps that baby's arm, it's fractured. And Dr. Curry and other leaders in this community persistently talk about there are ways that we as a community, that you as individual leaders can support young parents in understanding how to parent. Many of you, like I'm a grandpa of 5 grandkids, and so I know what it is to both have children and to have grandchildren. And let's face it, there are times that that's tough business, right? Many of you had role models from your own parents or extended family or other folks in your life who helped you deal with the stresses of parenthood. But increasingly, as mothers become younger and younger in this community, they don't have that support. And so again, my request and my challenge to you is to think about whether it's within your business, within your faith community, within your other social circles, how can you play a role in bringing supports to those young parents? If we know that the target is in fact parents of young children, especially first-time parents of young children, that offers us a wonderful opportunity to intervene and make a difference in the immediate. The second opportunity realm that I would like to talk to you about is what I call professional niche opportunities. What am I talking about there? We know that certain people in this community have unique access to children and therefore a unique obligation to be on the lookout for signs of child abuse. I want to give Dr. Hargens a lot of credit in the sense that through the Kosair Charities initiative, we reached out to her as well as Superintendent Schultz in the parochial schools, and they've stepped up. Next school year is going to begin with Jefferson County and parochial school faculties seeing productions about what to watch for if you're a 2nd grade teacher, or what to watch for if you're an 8th grade teacher, or what you need to do as a parent to be on the lookout for signs of abuse. That's the kind of professional niche responsibility that we want to see. I'll give you a wonderful opportunity that I think awaits us, and that is that in the last year for which we have data, 80% of the children who died from abuse in this state, let me say that again, 80% of child fatalities due to abuse in this state were in a doctor's office 2 weeks or less before they were killed. What medical professionals suggest is that if doctors were more sensitized and more focused on identifying those signs of abuse, we could have prevented 80% of kids in Kentucky who died. That's a challenge. 2 years ago, a state law was passed that had a long list of folks who were mandated to get required training to identify signs of abuse and neglect. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the medical community used its considerable weight and had themselves exempted. We're currently trying to work with medical community leaders to say, can we do this voluntarily, or do we need to go back to Frankfurt to make sure that it's a mandate, not a choice? But whether it's doctors or school teachers, child care workers, or leaders in faith communities, I, for one, am convinced that there are a range of opportunities that are out there for professionals, whether that's attorneys or social workers. You know your business better than I do, but the national trend line suggests that if we really think about how each profession can uniquely interface with the issue of child abuse, again, whether that's media or frontline workers, there's a role for you. So one of the things that I really hope you will leave here with is some cerebral itches, maybe not answers, but maybe some questions about how can my profession, how can my business, how can my role in life be part of stemming the tide of child abuse. The final part of HAND the engaging your hands. So you have that legal reporting responsibility, and I really do hope you'll think about how you share that with others. I think you have opportunities to intersect with individual families, again, professionally or in your personal world. You certainly have that professional opportunity. The other area that when I look at who is here today, you guys could be so helpful, and that is that we still have battles to fight in Frankfort. I will tell you that an objective view of what's going on in this state will tell you that there is a lack of transparency and there is a lack of accountability by state government when it comes to protecting kids from abuse or neglect. There are a number of opportunities that we see happening in 2014. As an example, we brought together some 400 Kentuckians last year from over 90 counties to have a summit on abuse and neglect. This was, I'm sure you'll remember in the media, both print and electronic, that was the height of the Amy Dye murder, other folks who had been killed in very high-profile cases. These 400 Kentuckians came together, and the one thing they wanted to have happen was an independent panel to review fatalities from abuse and neglect. In other words, when that tragedy happened, the request was, we got to figure out what went wrong. How did this happen? The good news is that we began that process this year, and that's in law. But we have to improve that. Currently, for instance, the panel sits within the governor's office. And realistically, and this is not about Governor Beshear, this could be about Governor Fletcher, or it could be about whoever is elected in 2015. We believe that we can't ask the governor to grade himself on how his administration is doing protecting kids. We have to have that located independently. I mean, I don't know about you, I'm sure your president and I know Judy Lambeth were excellent students. When I was in school, I did a lot better when I graded my own paper. And that's really what we're asking. Right now, we're saying that Governor Beshear or any future governor, we can't ask the governor to grade his own paper. We've got to have that located in a place that is outside. Something that does not affect Jefferson County, but it certainly affects our state, is that folks who are experts in child abuse believe that there is a real opportunity to improve protections for kids if we reform the coroner system. Now, large urban areas have coroners who are professionals, but in most rural Kentucky counties, the coroner is the owner of the only funeral home in town. Evidence from folks out in the state would suggest that they may not be real interested in serious investigations, given that they've got to turn around and talk to you about their business. So whether it's moving toward a more independent watchdog on abuse, whether it's reforming the coroner system, or whether it's making sure that the Cabinet for Health and Family Services have the resources and the protocols in place to make a difference, those are the kind of opportunities that await us in Frankfort. Those are the kind of opportunities that we count on you for. Today is a really important day. In 20 minutes, because I have been reminded 107 times, those of you who know Ken Grossman, I have 22 emails saying 1 o'clock is it, 1 o'clock is it, so I get it. So, you know, today is just a tease. I would direct your attention on that infographic to a website called the Face It campaign that Kosair Charities has just launched Tuesday. If you want more information or more direct interaction, go to it. You certainly can call us at Kentucky Youth Advocates. Former Senator Bill Bradley tells a wonderful story on himself. He was a newly elected senator. He was at a New York restaurant with some pretty wealthy supporters. They had, served the bread, and Senator Bradley mentioned to the server that he needed butter. He waited, no butter. He caught his attention, butter. Waited and waited. This went on. So finally, Senator Bradley rose up and approached the waiter, and he said, you may not know who I am. I'm Bill Bradley, former All-American at Princeton, Rhodes Scholar. I brought an NBA title to your New York Knicks. And currently, as a senator, I am co-chair of the Intercoastal Waterway Commission. the server said, well, you may not know who I am. I'm the guy in charge of the butter. Well, I do know who you are. I mean, you're not just big, you're influential. And if there's a request that I have today, is for you to take that challenge and to engage your heart and your head and your hand so that we can meet that Kosair Charities goal that by 2023, each and every child in this community will be free from abuse. Thank you.